Oh, it's making spaceship noises at idle.
Hello, people on the other side of a screen. It's your favorite wearing a lab coat but not a scientist Sarah here with something special that you all requested. Because a couple months ago when I reviewed the Mustang Mach-E, it was not the GT model, and a lot of you wanted me to drive that and see what I thought of it. So I got one. While I may not agree on the name choice Ford chose for this thing, I will definitely agree this thing is worthy of a GT badge on the back, because this is more of a performance vehicle than the first one. I mean, it has a glowing horse. What more could you ask for from a performance vehicle than a glowing horse? On top of the glowing horse though, the actual grille part itself is translucent. Under the right light from the side, you can see it's actually a clear shell with another plastic substructure behind it that gives it this kind of 3D effect to the grille. I really like this compared to the standard Mach-E edition. Well, first things first, this is definitely way different on the GT model. The rear diffuser has these little aggressive fins on them. Obviously it says GT on the back. Oh, that's cool. I just noticed it's got the little Mustang logo stamped into this hairy cardboard that'll get destroyed the first time something hits it. Just that quick first glance, the multi-link rear suspension looks essentially the same on the GT versus the non-GT Mach-E. Whoa, check that out. That's a plastic cap between the two spokes. It's actually got hubcaps on this thing. That's wild. So this, yeah, this is plastic. It's a giant plastic black section that goes in between the metal spoke. That is so weird. The entry model version of the Mach-E has one electric motor above all this hairy cardboard nonsense, and it's rear wheel drive, which is fun, I think. This GT though is dual motor, front and rear, and it's all-wheel drive, but it's independent drivetrain to each electric motor, so there's no need for a drive shaft or anything interlinking them up under here other than a giant battery pack. The combination of these two electric motors and that giant 88 kilowatt hour battery pack weigh in at 4,920 pounds, and it sits in what Ford calls the GE1 platform, which stands for Global Electrified 1. I know that seems like a bunch of random numbers and jargon that may not mean much, but something that I took away from it that I thought was kind of interesting is this platform that this car is built on is actually a modified version of the platform the 4th generation Ford Focus was built on. So even though they killed off the Focus here in America, it somehow lived on in the form of this, in a roundabout weird way. And in case you're wondering the jacking points on these Mach-E's, it's got this giant rail that goes all along the side of the battery pack, and there's some little arrows that tell you where to position them, but it makes lifting this car really simple. Maybe this was important for manufacturing, or maybe someone working at the Ford plant is an amateur tagger. We'll never know. Everything up here is aluminum in construction. It is a McPherson strut style front suspension. Your front anti-sway bar measures in at approximately 27 millimeter about-ish. It uses a composite plastic end link attached to a metal rod up here. So basically, at a quick glance, standing underneath this thing, there is really not much different than the non-GT models. It looks fairly similar underneath the car.
It's time for the braking test. No one behind me? Ready? Ooh. That was weird feeling. It didn't have a lot of bite initially, but it still brought me to a stop quickly. I don't know how that makes any sense. I stopped relatively short distance, but it was an aggressive feeling.
That braking was accomplished with a set of 4-piston Brembo Flexira calipers in a 385 millimeter or 15.16 inch front rotor. The Flexira just means that they're more aero-shaped and supposedly less weight, which reduces unsprung mass. And the wheels throwing off hard Mark V GTI vibes right now. I don't care what anyone says. That's the first thing I think of when I see these wheels. I kind of like them. Anyway, the wheel itself, it's a 20x8 and it's wrapped in a 245/45 20-inch Continental cross contact prescription tire. It says RX. It's prescription. These are prescription tires, don't argue. So here's the funny thing about the brakes that I can now see firsthand that I got this GT in the shop. They're literally the same ones that was on the non-GT model I reviewed a couple months back, except they're painted red for the GT. Same calipers, and out back you got just over a 12-inch rear rotor with a single pot caliper. The wheel and tire back here, same size as up front, square stance. That's kind of interesting how the rear strut bolts up to the inside of the wheel well, so we don't have to access anything from inside the car beyond a bunch of plastic panels. At least I don't think you do. Yeah, that's actually nice. Makes it really quick to change the struts back here.
In the name of science, it is now time to give it the beans. Bolstering check. Yeah, that's not too bad. I have multiple drive modes here in my center infotainment center display, from Whisper, which is whispery, Engage, which is engaging, and Unbridled for all my single ladies. Come on, I had to do that. As well as there's a grayed out section down below that says Unbridled Extend. Now that's an enhanced version of the Unbridled mode. It just enhances the performance capabilities and adds preemptive cooling for the battery and electric motors. It doesn't necessarily make it any faster, it just makes the vehicle more track prepared and ready, so that way it can provide the same performance at an extended period of time, I guess, if that makes any sense. Ready? Go. Ooh, jeez. Ooh, okay, that's good. It's not as quick as the EQS 580 I just reviewed. I thought it was gonna be quicker. On paper, it should be. I didn't feel it though.
Hood pop. Hello, car. I'm gonna pop your hood. Ah. Hood pop, and they don't hide it like Mercedes does. There's nothing but a big cubby. Dude, there's cup holders up here. That's wild, I don't remember that. Lifting the front cover didn't really reveal anything mechanical, but we're gonna go with it for ambiance. So, this Mach-E GT is propelled by two permanent magnet synchronous electric motors. Each motor, front and rear, produces 210 kilowatts, which equates to 282 horsepower, and 300 pound-feet of torque, giving you a combined total system output for the Mach-E GT of 480 horsepower and 600 pound-feet of torque, which, remember, because it's electric, is available at 0 RPM. There is, on top of this, a performance pack which adds 34 pound-feet of torque and no more horsepower. Just 34. And that equates to 0.3 seconds to 60 quicker, somehow. Just 34 pound-feet in a car that weighs almost 5,000 pounds makes that big of a difference. I didn't notice this on the other one I reviewed, but there's dual cup holders up here in the front storage compartment. It's a good size storage compartment too. This is super practical of a vehicle. Pretty sure these are just pop clips. Yep, they are. This just pops right off. There we go. That's better. Now I got that cover off, you can get a better look at what makes this thing tick. So you can see the electric motor is just right here, and this is the largest possible electric motor up front you can get on a Mach-E. You can see on the top here your power inverter. Also should be a DC to DC converter up here as well to step down the higher voltage DC for stuff like your turn signals, your horn, your radio. There is a battery right here, a traditional 12-volt battery, so that must be integrated into that system as well. You probably noticed that little reservoir with the neon green coolant in it, and that's because just like an internal combustion engine powered vehicle, this electric Mach-E also utilizes coolant to keep the batteries cool. In addition to that, it also utilizes the refrigerant for the HVAC system, your air conditioning, to further aid in cooling. The electric motors themselves, the stators are oil cooled from what I researched on this car. I get the whole point behind trying to get people to use the dealer only for maintenance, but I think it's a bit silly to hide your brake fluid reservoir underneath this plastic cover. There's just basic stuff like that that the end user should have access to freely. As far as the transmission goes, like many other electric vehicles, there isn't one per se like an internal combustion engine vehicle. It is an integrated drive unit built into the end of the electric motor. It's a coaxial single-speed gearbox with a 10-to-1 reduction ratio. And each electric motor has its own. So that allows you to do some pretty fun things with applying torque at different wheels when you need it, because it's not really linked mechanically with the ass end of the car. And speaking of ass ends, mine's falling asleep sitting in this front, and this plastic is cutting off circulation to my feet. So I don't recommend sitting up front here, even though it's got cup holders. I must be hard to take serious at times. Ouch, this hurts. Oh, I'm gonna have a cup holder print to my butt cheek.
It finally ungrayed itself. I can use unbridled extend for the first time in this entire week I've had this car. This is amazing that it did this for the review. Look. Ooh. Okay. Yay. Let's see what this is all about. Oh, it's making spaceship noises at idle. It doesn't feel faster, but it feels like it's got a little bit more spice. The regenerative braking is not on now. It actually feels like a normal vehicle, like an internal combustion engine vehicle. Coasts nice and easily. Oh, I like the enhanced sound effects. I wish you got the enhanced sound effects all the time in Unbridled. The driving experience of this versus the non-GT Mach-E is noticeable. It's not noticeable in straight line speed, but the overall feel of the car, the dynamic of the car on a windy road is enhanced for sure. You can definitely notice the all-wheel drive in this thing. The best way I can describe the driving experience of this is like the very first time I drove a Mitsubishi Evolution. It just feels like that type of feeling you got from the first time. You're like, wow, this is like an all-wheel drive monster. That's what I'm getting, that presence from this thing. Unfortunately, I'm not on a racetrack, so I can't really push this thing to its limits and tell you how it handles in comparison, but I did notice that at slow speed on corners, there's so much bite and rotation in this thing. It's just, it is that feeling like you're just learning and experiencing a high-power all-wheel drive vehicle for the first time. It's like a brand new thing to me. And I really like that about this Mach-E. I haven't gotten this with any other electric vehicle I've reviewed. And then there's this blue cruise mode that lets you drive completely hands-free, which is slightly terrifying but awesome at the same time. I disagree with calling this thing a Mustang, but I wholeheartedly agree with the fact that this is a performance vehicle. That GT badge on the back makes sense, especially in the handling department. Styling wise on the exterior, I like the look of the GT better than the standard Mach-E, especially in the front, the little glowing pony and the grille, all about that. It just looks that extra bit better with these little performance enhancements to the styling. It does look lower than the regular Mach-E, it just has more of a menacing presence to it. The interior styling wise, I love the little bronzy brass accents everywhere. It looks good. It's very just kind of, I don't know, it's like if you mixed a three-piece suit and a track pants and jacket together. That's what it feels and looks like in here. Is it worth paying extra for the GT over the non-GT? If you're looking for speed, Maybe if you get the Performance Pack GT, which this one is not, it has a tiny bit more torque, and that equates to 0.3 seconds quicker, 0 to 60 supposedly. But I don't know, I think the overall package, I just like this because it feels less more like an appliance crossover and more like a performance vehicle. This is just that extra little spice on the top, the Cholula sauce.
If you've never seen one of my car reviews before, I have multiple categories to rate and assess them, starting with the bean score. Is a rating of 1 to 5 beans based on the feeling you get behind your belly button when you give it the beans. And the Mach-E GT is getting a rating of 2.7 beans. This thing is fast. I was just expecting even faster with the figures I had in my head because I was using the Mercedes EQS 580 as a benchmark in my mind of the torque shove. I suspect there might be a little bit of like a torque management software somewhere in there that softens the initial acceleration from a dead line in contrast to that Mercedes, because this thing should technically be faster. It just didn't feel faster. It is faster than the non-GT though. That is for sure. Next is the cookie score. It's assessment of what you get for what you spend. And this car, as equipped, sitting right here, is getting a rating of 4.7 cookies. The very first impression I got when I first started taking this on some corners, the first evening I had it, was just a throwback of how I felt the first time I drove an STI or an Evo. It had that impact on me as a performance vehicle, even though this is a crossover. I'm so impressed with the performance. I know I was expecting faster in a straight line, but I just was thinking 600 pound-feet of torque. I was like, this thing is gonna like rip my face off when I take off. Next is the mechanic score. It's assessment of how much of an ass pain it would be to work on a 1 to 5 wrench scale, 5 being easy, 1 being a nightmare. And this Mach-E GT is getting a rating of 4 inches. I think if you understand electric vehicles in general as a piece of equipment and how to safely work on them, I think this would actually be a fairly simple vehicle to work on. I would love the opportunity actually to mess around with one of these. Lastly is the Penguin score, an assessment of how much I personally like a vehicle. And the Mach-E GT is getting a rating of 4.5 penguins. I like this thing a lot. I really do. It's grown on me. I still don't like that it's called a Mustang, but it's whatever, I guess. I don't know. I'm a fan because it's just weird. It's a weird vehicle and I like weird things. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this review and I will see you soon with another. Bye.